to the Just a Little Bit Out West podcast. We are talking about the subject of miracles this week. Today, we're going to start in 1 Samuel chapter 5. So it says there in 1 Samuel, the Philistines took the ark of God and they brought it from Ebenezer and they brought it over to Ashdod. And when they took the ark, they brought it into the house of Dagon, and they set it by Dagon. Dagon was one of the gods of the Philistines. He was a pagan god, and so they took it into what you would call, I guess, the temple of Dagon, and there was an idol there, a figurine of Dagon. And when they of that town, Ashdod, arose early in the morning, they found that Dagon had fallen on its face to the earth before the ark of the Lord. And so they took Dagon and they picked him up, brushed him off, and set him up again. And so the next day, the idol had fallen over again, but this time the hands of this idol had been cut off. Therefore neither the priests of Dagon nor any that come into Dagon's house tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod unto this day. There's a certain symbolism here that I don't know that I really understand it, but apparently Dagon had his hands on the threshold of this temple and they were cut off. This is a miraculous happening that revealed to the Philistines that their God was not the real God. He was a poser God, and that he wasn't as strong as the God of Israel, the God of the ark. The hand of the Lord was heavy upon those of Ashdod, and he destroyed them and smote them with emerods, which, according to what I've read, that's hemorrhoids. And when the men of Ashdod saw that it was like that, they said, we don't want this ark here anymore. Get this thing out of here, because since it's been here, things have not been going well, and our God is no match. And so they said, what are we going to do about this? And they said, well, take it back to Israel, give it back to them, because their God is too strong. One of the elements of this story it doesn't really necessarily go along with our theme of miracles, but I just think it's very significant that these people were so entrenched in their own idolatry that even though they had a physical manifestation that they could look at, they could see, God proved to them and showed them, just like had happened in Egypt. God said, I am bigger than your God. And since you have disrespected me and since you have not honored me, then things are not going to go well for you. You're going to have bad things happening to you. It's funny to me, though, that nobody in Ashdod came up with the idea of, hey, let's worship that God instead of our God. That just seems so weird to me. But we are seeing that happen in our own society, where people are seeing the truth right in their face and refuse to accept it. They would rather hold on to their misconceptions, lies, deceptions, whatever you want to call it. They would rather hold on to that than to change their ways. Remember, we talked about the bag with holes in it from Haggai. This is that same kind of a thing. This is saying, I got bad stuff going on in my life, but instead of changing my ways, I'm just going to get God out of my life. There's a lesson there. We need to really make an effort to understand that there are things in our life that we need to change. All right, so you got the point. Now let's turn over to the book of Acts, and we're going to go to chapter 8 in the book of Acts. And it says in the 26th verse, an angel of the Lord spoke to Philip, and he said, go south So he went down there, and there was this guy who was from Ethiopia, and he was in his chariot reading the book of Isaiah. And so Philip says to him, he says, "Do you understand what you're reading?" And the Ethiopian says, "How can I unless I have somebody explain it to me?" And so Philip says, "Well, I can explain it to you." And he gets in the chariot and he goes with this Ethiopian for a while. And he starts explaining the book of Isaiah. And it says in the 32nd verse, the place of scripture which he was reading was where it talks about Jesus, and it says, "He was led as a sheep to the slaughter, and like a lamb dumb before his shearer, so opened not his mouth. In his humiliation his judgment was taken away, and who shall declare his generation? For his life is taken away from the earth." And so the eunuch, he asked Philip, what is this talking about? Philip starts explaining to him how Jesus fulfilled that prophecy. And the Ethiopian was convinced, and he said, "You know what? I need to be worshiping Jesus, because if he is the Messiah, he's the one I've been waiting for. I want to worship him." And he said, "Here's some water. Let's get me baptized." And so Philip did that. And then miraculously, Philip just was instantly disappeared and showed up in a different place. So there's another example of miraculous things happening. And let me just say that about this, because I have heard of people being quote unquote translated, where they went from one place to another instantaneously. I have no doubt that that can happen. The difficulty comes for us when we have the idea that some of these miraculous things happen just because we want them to. And you and I both know from experience that's not how it works. I like to think of miracles, and I'm talking about the kind of miracles that are way outside of the normal. I mean, like we talked about the first week, grass growing is a miracle. A baby being born is a miracle. There are things happening that are miraculous every day in every way, but they're normal miracles, and so we sort of get used to those. The kinds of miracles that are outside of our normal, I like to think of those as being like a spare tire on your car. If you put one of those little donuts on your car, it will get you from here to there, and it will get you safely out of danger. You can put that little donut on there, and you can drive 50 miles an hour, and you can get up to the next exit or to your house or whatever you need to get to. But then you need to take that spare tire off and put a new tire back on, because you can't drive on that spare tire for a long period of time. To me, this is how those kinds of miracles are, that God doesn't really intend for us to limp along on that kind of a miracle, because he wants us to live in fellowship with him, and we can avoid places of danger, and we can know what to do, and we have wisdom, and we are able to do the things that he says that we should do without having to be rescued. We have a tendency sometimes to feel like, well, just because I want this to happen, it should happen. And I can tell you from my experience, that never happens. Yet at the same time, don't get me wrong, miracles are happening all around us all the time. And I think we have to be able to discern which ones are the life-saving miracles and which ones are the everyday wisdom of God miracles. All right, I will see you tomorrow, and we'll see if we can make this a little bit clearer than I did today. All right, take care. Bye-bye.